A single phone call revealed that I was actually a fake young master. That very night, I gathered my 3 sisters for a family meeting. Big sister can't use her legs. After I leave, make sure to take her outside for some sunlight. More often. Second sister, remember to take your medicine on time. Don't lose your temper. And don't bully the biological brother who's coming back. Third sister looked at me with gentle eyes, yet she carried an air of danger around her. Instead of teasing me, I looked at her overly beautiful face and sighed earnestly, telling her not to keep causing trouble. I'd already be grateful if she could avoid getting hurt, but on my very first day, back in the Northeast, the real young master called me. Brother, I can't handle these 3 ancestors of yours. They're fighting over who gets to be your partner. Our family is different from ordinary wealthy families. Unlike those who reconcile with their first love and leave home, or travel the world with their childhood sweetheart. My eldest sister is 28 this year. She should have been dominating the business world. But a car accident took away her legs. She has been depressed ever since. Every day, I make time to take her out for walks. I show her dogs peeing by the roadside and point out the fresh buds growing on tree branches. I hope she can see the warmth and life in this world, regain her confidence, and stand up again. Second sister was kidnapped as a child, which left deep psychological scars. She developed bipolar disorder. Every day, I supervise her medication. Whenever she can't control her temper, I hold her tightly with concern. No one else can manage her. But fortunately, she still listens to me. Although third sister seems the most normal, she is actually an obsessive person. She is cold-hearted and ruthless. She has a beautiful and gentle appearance. But beneath it, she would often watch me taking care of the other 2 sisters, then casually reveal an injury on her hand. With a faint smile, she would ask, "Am I next?" So even though I was the youngest in the family, I had to act as both father and mother to the 3 of them. That was how our broken yet wealthy family. I learned that I wasn't their biological child. I couldn't even describe how I felt. There was some relief, but even more concern buried deep inside my heart. As for the real young master and me, it was said that a nurse mixed us up at birth because both of us had a small red mole on our faces. Mine was beneath my eye, while his was on his cheek. He had been living in the north with my biological parents. He was tall and slim, outgoing and generous. At that moment, I felt somewhat relieved. At least one person in this family turned out fine. After the meeting, I lay alone on my familiar bed. For once, I couldn't sleep. After 20 years in this family, there were simply too many memories. Our parents were rarely home when we were young. Aside from the nanny, it was my 3 sisters who raised me. Big sister was the most reliable. Whether it was seasonal clothing or parent-teacher meetings, whenever our parents were absent, took care of everything perfectly. Second sister had a fiery temper, but she was fiercely protective. With her backing me up, no one dared bully me at school. Third sister was closest to me in age, so she spent the most time with me. Thinking back to the meeting and the indifferent look on third sister's face, I couldn't help but sigh. I just hoped she wouldn't cause any trouble. Just before I fell asleep, a loud thud suddenly came from big sister's room. I immediately sat up. Then I rushed out of bed. Because of her disability, I had once suggested hiring a professional live-in caregiver, but she stubbornly refused every time. Her already quiet personality had become even colder. I was always worried she might give up on life. I even moved my room next to hers, so I could hear any movement at any time. Now, I gently knocked on her door. "Big sister, did you fall? I'm coming in. Lin Muqing's voice came through the door. It carried shame and despair. I frowned, then hurriedly opened the door. The room was dark. Lin Muqing was sitting on the floor. Her legs were bent at an unnatural angle. One hand gripped the bedsheet tightly, while the other covered her eyes. Her entire body trembled. I rushed over immediately, carefully helping her back onto the bed. I asked anxiously, "Where are you hurt? Let me see your knees." Lin Muqing grabbed my hand, then gently shook her head, as if the vulnerability from moments ago had never existed. She returned to her usual self. "I'm fine, don't worry." Yet her eyes were still red. It was obvious she had been crying. I couldn't stop worrying. "Big sister, please hire a caregiver. Otherwise, I won't be able to relax after I leave. If I'm not here next time, what if you fall again?" Lin Muqing stared at me deeply. After a long pause, she looked away, as if speaking casually. "Can't you stay? Even if he comes back, our family can easily afford to support you. You don't need to worry about money. I'll return to work tomorrow. I heard there are several promising projects recently. I'll definitely make a lot of money." Hearing that, I suddenly burst into laughter. Big sister had finally regained her spirit. That was wonderful. As for her wish for me to stay, I chose not to answer her directly. The real child of the Lin family was coming back, and I should return to the parents who were truly mine. I'd never met my biological parents before. I wanted to see them. Early the next morning, the housekeeper prepared a huge breakfast spread. After wiping her hands, she quietly came over to me. "Second miss hasn't come downstairs. I'm too scared to knock on her door. As for third miss, she went out early this morning." I nodded, then sat beside my eldest sister. Lin Muqing had changed into a business suit. She silently drank her porridge. I placed a shrimp dumpling into her bowl. Then I grinned at her. "Eat more, big sister. Good luck at work." Lin Muqing paused briefly, then obediently ate the food I gave her, only after her assistant arrived excitedly to pick her up. Did I finally let out a sigh? I carried a bowl of porridge to second sister's room. "Second sister, breakfast is ready." No one answered. I pretended to leave. "Well, if you don't want to talk to me, I'll head downstairs first." Flick. The door was suddenly pulled open from the inside. Lin Baiwei stared at me gloomily. A mocking smile appeared on her face. "Weren't you the one who decided to leave? Why do you still care whether I eat or not?" I ignored her bad temper and walked into the room. "Stop being stubborn. How can you take your medicine without breakfast?" Lin Baiwei slammed the door shut. Then she followed me step by step. "Have you wanted to leave this family for a long time?" "I'm mentally ill. Big sister is disabled. Have we always been a burden to you?" I placed the porridge on the table, then turned around and noticed how pale she looked. "Why do you look so awful? Didn't you sleep last night?" Lin Baiwei bit her lip, growing even angrier. "Again. You're doing it again. You never answered my question." Her breathing became rough. Her fists clenched unconsciously. I was startled and quickly grabbed her wrist. I took her to the bathroom to rinse her hands with cold water and soaked a towel in icy water. I pressed it against her neck while gently rubbing her back. After going through the familiar routine, Lin Baiwei gradually calmed down. Looking at the nail marks left in her palms from clenching her fists, I gently rubbed her hands. I was still very young when second sister was kidnapped. I only remembered her returning home, covered in injuries and refusing everyone's touch. She was like a frightened kitten. She smashed every piece of furniture in the house. According to Big Sister, 3-year-old me had run over to Lin Baiwei. I hugged her leg while crying, begging her not to be angry. Lin Baiwei lost control of her emotions and almost hurt me. Fortunately, she regained her senses at the last moment. Then she picked me up and burst into tears. Nanan, I'm sorry. Second sister, I'm only going back to my own home. I'm not cutting ties with you. I held her hand, looking at her pitifully, just like I did when I was little. Or is it because you found out we're not related by blood? You don't want to acknowledge me anymore, and yet you're saying I'd look down on you. That really hurts. Lin Baiwei frowned. Her voice turned anxious. You know, that's not what I mean. Taking advantage of the moment, I brought the porridge to her lips. Then eat your breakfast, and I'll believe you. Lin Baiwei pursed her lips. Reluctantly, she finished the meal. Afterward, I placed the medicine into handed her water mouth, and watched until she swallowed everything. My mood instantly brightened. I clapped happily and praised her. Second sister, you're amazing. In the future, even when I'm not around, you have to keep taking your medicine, okay? Big sister has already started moving forward again. You're the second sister. You need to get better too. Lin Baiwei had already calmed down. She simply turned her head away, refusing to look at me. Then don't leave. Stay by our side. I pretended not to understand and laughed awkwardly. All right, all right. I'll come back and visit often. Besides, if I don't come, you can always visit me. I heard it's already snowing in the north. Next time we'll have a snowball fight together. Lin Baiwei merely turned her head away. She didn't say another word. After finally comforting two of my sisters, I let out a tired sigh. Only then did I have time to pull out my suitcase and start packing my clothes. The real young master was expected to arrive tomorrow morning. Coincidentally, my flight was also scheduled for tomorrow morning. But before that, there was still one major problem left unresolved. I rubbed the bridge of my nose in frustration. Although big sister was gloomy, and second sister was hot-tempered, the one who truly gave me headaches was my third sister, Lin Zhirou. Just after nightfall, someone barged into my room without warning. The footsteps were brisk. High heels clicked loudly against the wooden floorboards. She never knocked. Arrogant and rude as always. I didn't even need to look up to know exactly who it was. I set my book down, planning to have a serious talk with Lin Zhirou. But the moment I saw her, my expression changed. She looked completely unconcerned. The kind of expression that made anyone angry at first glance. What are you smiling at? If you hurt yourself again, I'll never talk to you for the rest of my life. I dragged her over to the sofa and sat her down, then angrily began treating her wounds. I deliberately pressed the iodine-soaked cotton swab onto her injuries. Yet, Lin Zhirou's smile only grew wider. She looked delighted, as if something wonderful had happened. Are you worried about me? I shot her a glare. Of course, you're my third sister. Lin Zhirou stared at me, her tone suddenly turning aggressive, carrying a dangerous undertone. Not anymore. Before I realized it, her arms had already wrapped around me. Her gaze traveled from my eyebrows to my lips. A bad feeling hit me. I hurriedly raised my hand to block her face. Then I suddenly felt something warm against my palm. My face flushed red. I wanted to smack her right then and there. Lin Zhirou, are you a dog or something? Her smile widened even further. Not calling me third sister anymore? I quickly looked away, using the excuse of returning the medicine kit to retreat to a safer distance. A minute later, after the heat on my face finally faded, I casually spoke again. I've already talked to big sister and second sister. After I leave, don't fight with them. If there's nothing else, I'd like to get some rest. But Lin Zhirou suddenly spoke. The first thing you ever said was third sister. On your 4th birthday, you were so excited during the day that you wet the bed at night. You were too embarrassed to face anyone. I was the one who washed your blanket clean. She slowly stood up and walked toward me. In first grade, a little girl confessed to you. You were so scared that you cried. I spent 3 days comforting you. You wouldn't even sleep unless I stayed beside you. By your 3rd year of middle school, you had grown even more handsome. On graduation day, so many people confessed to you. You proudly told them, none of you are prettier than my 3rd sister. Why would I date any of you? Lin Zhirou had already walked right up to me. Her cool fingers pinched my cheek. Watching her face draw closer, I couldn't help but feel my heartbeat quicken. When you were in your 1st year of high school, your grades started slipping. You were gloomy all day long. You even refused tutoring from Lin Mucheng. Your temper was so bad that even Lin Bai Wei avoided provoking you. Yet you kept coming to me. You complained pitifully, asking why I wouldn't comfort you. Fell silent. Suddenly, I didn't know what to say. Every little memory, every tiny detail. Lin Zhirou remembered them all with startling clarity. Looking into her eyes, I was shaken by the intensity of the emotions inside them. Lin Zhirou spoke softly. So now, you don't want your 3rd sister anymore? I didn't sleep at all that night. At 3 in the morning, I quietly dragged my suitcase outside. Winter in the north was nothing like the south. From the moment the plane landed, almost everyone instinctively put on their thickest clothes. I hurried off the plane, but when the wind hit my face, like a blade, I was still too stunned to react. For a brief moment, I found myself wondering how my sisters would handle big sister's weather. Legs definitely couldn't take it. Second sister was too delicate to willingly endure such cold. As for Lin Zhirou, forget it. Better not think about her. The discovery of the baby swap happened in a rather unexpected way. Back then, both families were expecting children around the same time. Since both households were financially well off, they chose the same hospital. 20 years ago, medical technology wasn't nearly as advanced. Only recently, when the hospital upgraded its record system, its staff discovered that 2 babies had been switched. Naturally, they couldn't immediately reach Mrs. Lin. Instead, the biological son received the news first. His name was Zihao. He had grown up cheerful, kind-hearted, and open-minded. When he learned that he had unknowingly taken another boy's place in such a wonderful family, he felt both guilty and uneasy. After pulling every connection he had, the first thing he asked me when he finally reached me, little brother, was, how have your parents treated you? When he learned that I'd rarely experienced parental affection, he became even more guilty. Little brother, once you get here, Mom and Dad are wonderful. They've been thinking about you constantly. Our mom's braised pork ribs with green beans are absolutely delicious. And Dad's stewed crucian carp smells incredible. Honestly, hearing Zihao talk like that, even before meeting them, I had already started longing for that family. Zihao was also curious about my 3 sisters. After discussing it, we decided to experience each other's the moment I walked out of the airport. Before I even had a chance to look around, I spotted a huge crowd of people of all ages gathered together. They were holding up a giant, glowing sign. Written on it were the words, "Son, welcome home." At the front stood a middle-aged couple, wearing fur coats. Their eyes and noses were red. The moment the truth came out, the father completely lost control and rushed forward without hesitation into a tight embrace. Years of longing finally exploded at this very moment. The guilt crushing him from the inside. Our protagonist was completely caught off guard by the overwhelming emotion. Process anything, an even crazier scene unfolded. A huge crowd suddenly poured into the room and surrounded him from every direction. Like that, the family inspection session officially began. This was the relatives immediately noticed that he looked almost identical to his father when he was young. At this point, nobody needed a DNA test resemblance anymore. Was simply one aunt quickly stepped forward to claim her position in the family hierarchy. Not wanting to be left behind, the other relatives immediately joined in. Introductions were flying from every direction. Our protagonist could barely keep track of who was who, and just when things couldn't get any more chaotic, the teasing started. The family members began roasting each other right in front of him. Of course, the atmosphere became even livelier after that. Then came the ultimate family red envelopes tradition. Started appearing one and honestly after another. The protagonist never stood a chance against this attack. Every relative wanted to show their affection. Somehow. Money, gifts, blessings. Everything was thrown at him. This wasn't a reunion anymore. It felt more like a welcome home festival, organized by the entire clan. The competition among the relatives was only getting started. Both sides looked ready to argue over who got to spoil him first. Luckily, the older generation stepped in before the situation escalated into a family battlefield. The protagonist finally took in the full scale of the scene. There were more than 20 relatives gathered here, and that's when the realization truly hit him. This wasn't just a simple welcome. The Gu family had practically mobilized every senior family member to greet him. Watching all of this unfold, he couldn't help but think that blood ties were something incredible. Most of these people were complete strangers to him, yet their warmth felt surprisingly genuine. There was no awkwardness and no sense of distance. Instead, everything felt strangely familiar. As the crowd became harder and harder to control, the parents finally stepped. They knew this couldn't continue forever. After all, their son had only just arrived. The father gently placed a large hand on the boy's head. And just like that, he officially welcomed him home. The simple gesture hit harder than expected. The protagonist quietly lowered his head. For a moment, words simply failed him. Outside, heavy snow continued falling from the night sky. The family instinctively gathered around him. Everyone was trying to shield him from the cold wind. Then his father suddenly removed his expensive fur coat. Without even thinking twice, he threw it over his son's head. The protagonist immediately tried to stop him, but the father simply laughed it off. To him, this wasn't even a discussion. His son came first. Every single time. The protagonist opened his mouth to protest, but in the end, he quietly swallowed his words. The Gu family had been doing well in business for years. Their living conditions were more than comfortable. Soon, the massive group arrived home, and surprisingly, even with over 20 people entering together, the huge 3-story house didn't feel crowded at all. But the biggest surprise was still waiting outside. An elderly woman was already standing at the entrance. Snow had accumulated on her hair. It was obvious she had been waiting for a very long time. The moment the family saw her, everyone became worried. At her age, standing outside in this weather was no joke. But the old woman ignored all of that. Her eyes never left the boy. Her lips trembled slightly. Tears kept flowing. Yet she couldn't say a single word. The parents gently introduced the elderly woman. This was his grandmother, the person who had waited decades for this moment. Without any hesitation, the protagonist walked forward. He carefully supported the old woman by the arm. And for the very first time, he naturally called her Grandma. That single word completely broke her emotional defenses. The old woman burst into tears. Years of regret finally surfaced. She couldn't stop thinking about everything he had endured alone. Then she gently stroked his hair. This time, however, there was finally a smile on her face. Because now, the child had finally returned. The family quickly began talking about dinner preparations. Everyone wanted him to enjoy his first meal back. Even the father looked oddly nervous despite being a grown man. Both parents hovered around him non-stop. They clearly wanted to do more, but they didn't know where to begin. So they could only keep finding small things to do. The affection in the room was overwhelming. Even the protagonist found himself getting emotional. Finally, he spoke the words everyone had been waiting to hear. His voice trembled slightly, but it was sincere. He acknowledged that he was finally home. The celebration continued deep into the night. Nobody seemed willing to end the reunion. His mother personally escorted him to his room afterward. Honestly, she looked reluctant to leave. She kept stealing glances at her son. Only after several seconds did she finally close the door. The protagonist let out a long breath, then collapsed onto the sofa. The room had been prepared perfectly. After taking a shower and changing clothes, he finally relaxed. That's when he remembered something important. Small. The moment he checked it, his eyebrows immediately shot upward. There were dozens of missed calls waiting for him, and even more unread messages flooding the screen. One particular person, however, remained completely silent. Curious, he decided to check Gu Zihao's messages first. And unsurprisingly, the guy had practically written a novel. Ever since they added each other on WeChat, Gu Zihao had constantly tried to stay in contact. Back then, the protagonist wasn't very hopeful about the family reunion, but Gu Zihao never gave up. Day after day, he shared stories about the family and repeatedly encouraged him to come back just once, just to meet everyone in person. According to him, children were treasured above everything else here. And now, seeing today's events unfold, it was impossible to say he had exaggerated. Opening the chat history, the protagonist started reading from the very first unread message. Apparently, Gu Zihao had already visited the Lin family, and what happened next sounded far more interesting than anyone expected. Because the looks he received there were absolutely terrifying. According to Gu Zihao, the eldest Lin sister had become the center of everyone's attention. The discussion quickly drifted toward her condition and appearance. Even so, nobody could deny she was incredibly beautiful. Then the topic suddenly shifted to the second sister. And apparently her temper was just as explosive as ever. One disagreement later, and the entire house was already on the verge of chaos. Meanwhile, the third sister received a completely different evaluation. Even Gu Zihao couldn't stop praising her looks. The guy sounded genuinely impressed. Thinking about Lin Zhirou, the protagonist couldn't help nodding. Just as he finished reading the messages, Gu Zihao suddenly called him directly. The moment the call connected, dramatic commentary began. From the tone alone, something ridiculous had happened, and honestly, it was even crazier than expected. The three sisters were apparently arguing because of him. Naturally, the protagonist had absolutely no idea what was going on. Meanwhile, Gu Zihao happily provided live commentary from the battlefield. The eldest sister had proposed a bold idea, and that proposal instantly detonated the room. The second sister exploded on the spot. The argument escalated immediately. No hesitation. Everyone started throwing verbal attacks at each other without mercy. But then came the real plot twist. Gu Zihao sounded unbelievably excited, because during the argument, the eldest sister actually managed to stand up from her wheelchair. Hearing that news, the protagonist smiled helplessly. He had expected something like someone with her personality would never stay broken forever. Meanwhile, Gu Zihao continued his colorful report. According to him, the Lin family's genetics were absurdly overpowered. But he quickly got back on topic. The argument was still ongoing, and everyone was refusing to back down. The sisters kept firing verbal attacks with deadly accuracy. Every sentence was a critical hit. At this point, Gu Zihao was enjoying the drama way too much, honestly. The guy sounded like he had bought front row tickets. After listening for a while, the protagonist asked about Lin Zhirou, and that question changed the mood immediately. Gu Zihao paused for a moment. Then he gave an honest answer. Out of all three sisters, she was by far the most intimidating. The guy even expressed sympathy for the protagonist. After hearing that, the protagonist briefly explained what was happening on his side. Then the call ended. Still curious, he checked his phone again, but there was still no message from Lin Zhirou. Eventually he gave up and put the phone away. That night, he slept surprisingly well. The next morning, he walked outside and immediately found his grandmother waiting for him. Downstairs, his parents were already making dumplings. The entire atmosphere felt warm. The family couldn't stop fussing over him. They even remembered his food preferences. Every detail had been carefully prepared. It was impossible not to notice. His parents watched him with cautious smiles. They clearly hoped he would stay longer. After all, school wouldn't start for a while. The protagonist didn't immediately give an answer. Not long after breakfast, a group of young people arrived next door. They were all childhood friends of Gu Zihao. The moment they saw the protagonist, most of them curiously gathered around him. Only one girl seemed slightly dismissive. Soon afterward, the group suggested going skiing. The protagonist agreed. Everything seemed normal at first. Then, suddenly, the driver slammed on the brakes. Everyone was caught off guard. A vehicle had aggressively cut them off and blocked the road completely. Fresh skid marks showed just how recklessly it had arrived. Then the car door opened, and out stepped Lin Zhirou, wearing only a light coat. She walked straight toward him. The atmosphere instantly became tense. The protagonist apologized to the others, then opened the door. Before he could even step out completely, Lin Zhirou grabbed him. In front of everyone's eyes, she dragged him away. The entire group was left speechless. Without saying a word, she drove off immediately. For anyone else, this situation would have been extremely nerve-wracking. Because at this moment, Lin Zhirou looked stunning, but also terrifying. The protagonist noticed her freezing hands. It was obvious she had rushed here in a hurry. Yet she refused to explain anything. Her expression remained cold, and she simply kept driving. Seeing her mood, he stopped asking questions. After about 10 minutes, the car arrived at a hotel. Lin Zhirou immediately got out and firmly led him inside without giving him a chance to escape. The moment the room door closed, the confrontation finally began. All the frustration she had been holding back came pouring out at once. The protagonist was completely caught off guard. His thoughts froze for a moment. Only his racing heartbeat remained. Lin Zhirou continued advancing, while he was forced to retreat, step by step. Eventually, he ended up sitting on the bed, finally finding a chance to speak. He tried to regain control of the conversation. Naturally, he was both shocked and annoyed. After all, the situation had become incredibly complicated. Meanwhile, Lin Zhirou showed no intention of backing down. She stared directly at him, completely dominating the conversation. To her, none of the usual excuses mattered. What mattered was why he had disappeared without saying anything. That was the question she wanted answered. Everything else came second. The protagonist recalled their previous awkward encounter. It had left a deep impression on both of them, and clearly, neither had forgotten it. Now that memory had resurfaced, unable to answer immediately, he simply looked away in silence. And just like that, Lin Zhirou acted as if nothing unusual had happened. Face again, clearly having no intention of letting him escape. She looked less like a calm older sister, poor guy could more barely think straight, as her sweet whispers completely shattered whatever resistance he had left. Meanwhile, he quickly called his parents. He informed them that he'd be returning later than expected. The moment the call ended, Lin Zhirou immediately snatched his phone and started browsing through it as casually as if it were her own device. The protagonist could only roll his eyes because, honestly, this was nothing new. But then, Lin Zhirou suddenly stood up and began searching through his jacket. The protagonist instantly sensed danger. Before he could stop her, she had already discovered the hidden backup phone. Yep, the secret one. And because she was in a good mood, she calmly installed her tracking and monitoring software, then even praised him for being clever enough to hide it this time. The protagonist opened his mouth, only to realize there was absolutely nothing he could say. After all, ever since childhood, Lin Zhirou's possessiveness had always been on another level. If he spent too much time caring about the eldest or second sister, then later that night, Lin Zhirou would demand even more attention. Only after completely winning that invisible competition would she be satisfied. No exceptions. Even his very first phone had been a gift from her. And behind that beautiful smile was unrestricted access to every part of his social life. From GPS-enabled watches to shoes hiding miniature cameras. Everything he did was practically an open book to her, which is exactly why, after learning the truth about his identity, he secretly switched phones and contacted Zihao through hidden channels. Even the plane ticket had been booked through someone else. Unfortunately, She still tracked him down after only one night. But the reviewer has to say this. That was probably the worst night of sleep Lin Zhirou had experienced in years. Soon, she pulled him tightly into her arms again, planting kisses across his face. This time, he stopped her and quietly looked into her eyes, finally asking the question that mattered most. Lin Zhirou's gaze immediately deepened. A long sigh, because what she felt her lips wasn't merely affection. It was love pushed far beyond reason, the kind that had already crossed into madness. In her eyes, he had always belonged beside her, and nobody would ever take him away. Nobody at all. Her grip tightened as emotions finally spilled over. And seeing those nearly uncontrollable eyes, the protagonist made a decision. For the first time, he chose to accept those feelings rather than run away. When they first entered the hotel, it was morning. Now the sky outside was already turning dark. The curtains remained tightly shut. Inside the room, the atmosphere had finally calmed down. Lin Zhirou had fallen asleep, and surprisingly, she looked incredibly peaceful. The protagonist simply watched her. Studying a side of her few people ever saw. A small smile appeared on his face, followed by a quiet sigh of contentment. Before night fully arrived, the two returned to the Gu family and immediately home. Everyone noticed that Lin Zhirou had prepared gifts in advance. Officially, she introduced herself as Zihao's third sister from the Lin family. But there was one tiny detail she made impossible to ignore. She never let go of the protagonist's hand. A silent declaration, louder than any speech. At first, Gu father and Gu mother were completely stunned. But honestly, Lin Zhirou was operating at max charisma. Her manners, appearance, and conversation skills won the family over almost instantly. Then came the career discussion. And that's where the plot twist dropped. She casually revealed the company she owned. A tech giant that had exploded onto the market in recent years. Artificial intelligence, virtual reality. The company was everywhere. And apparently, Lin Zhirou is the boss. The protagonist immediately looked at her. She simply blinked, back lazily, as if apologizing. What a ridiculous flex. Later that night, the protagonist sent Zihao a message. After that, he immediately went to sleep. Because honestly, it had been an exhausting day. Gu father and Gu mother even offered to let Lin Zhirou stay overnight, but she politely declined, choosing to return to a nearby hotel instead. Naturally, the parents were impressed. They couldn't stop praising her character. Elegant, respectful, perfectly mannered. Meanwhile, the protagonist almost laughed because he knew exactly what was going through her mind. She probably wanted to return to the hotel room from earlier and relive every second of it. Yep, definitely her style. The next morning, he opened his phone. The screen froze for several seconds from the notification flood. Zihao had practically written an entire novel overnight. The final messages immediately caught his attention. Bad news. The eldest and second sisters were already on their way. Zihao swore he had explained everything. This was only a temporary family exchange. Nobody was disappearing forever. Unfortunately, neither sister listened. Not even a little. Then came the teasing. Congratulations on finally getting together with third sister. Should I start calling you brother-in-law now? The message practically laughed by itself. The protagonist thought about it. And honestly, it didn't sound too bad. Then he remembered the other two sisters. Instant headache. Not long afterward, the first floor suddenly became noisy. He listened carefully and immediately recognized Lin Muqing's voice. Without hesitation, he pulled his legs back under the blanket. Nope. He was now a protected child with loving parents. Let the adults handle it. The reviewer can already tell. A brand new family battlefield is about to begin. And this upcoming confrontation looks far more dangerous than anyone expected. To little him, she wasn't just pretty. She practically had a glowing aura. And every time she smiled at him, his entire day instantly became perfect. Man was completely enchanted before he even knew what romance was. That dazzling person belonged to his family. So, naturally, he genuinely believed he was the happiest kid on earth. Back then, he wanted her to feed him every meal. He wanted her to comfort him, to sleep, honestly, every night. If possible, he would have monopolized every second of her day. But everything changed when he turned 10. That happiness started becoming frustration because he found himself repeatedly asking one painful question. Why did she have to be his sister? After all, his teacher had already crushed his dreams with a single lesson. Families don't get married. Families don't build that kind of future together. Looking at Lin Zhirou, holding his hand so naturally, he suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of unfairness. For the first time in his life, he escaped her embrace and ran away crying. Poor kid got hit with existential damage before middle school. Gave him his very first phone. Naturally, he was thrilled. He spent the entire night playing with it, like any excited kid would. But not long afterward, something strange happened. One day, a girl from school confessed that she liked him. She simply wanted to spend more time with him. Our boy was still wondering how to respond politely, when Lin Zhirou suddenly stormed into his room with a terrifying expression. Without explanation, she snatched away his phone. And that was when he realized the truth. She had been monitoring his phone all along. But instead of being angry, he became ridiculously happy. Yep, this family is operating on a completely different weakness. Messing with Lin Zhirou became a daily hobby. He openly searched for beautiful actresses online. He chatted endlessly with friends about attractive girls at school. He accepted gifts from female classmates without hesitation and flashed charming smiles wherever he went. Meanwhile, Lin Zhirou's possessiveness grew more intense day after day, and somehow he enjoyed provoking it. Then fate delivered a brutal wake-up call. The eldest sister suffered a serious car accident. Overnight, he matured far beyond his years. For the first time, he understood responsibility. And he also realized something else. The relationship between him and Lin Zhirou couldn't continue forever. If it could never stand, then maybe it should disappear completely. But then, a call from Zihao turned everything upside down. The truth about the switched identities finally surfaced. Talk about a plot twist. Arriving at the perfect moment, he immediately began communicating with Zihao through a secret phone. And from that very day, Lin Zhirou became even more dangerous because the final chain holding her back had snapped. At the same time, our protagonist finally made up his mind. He started preparing a silent escape, a journey designed to leave without warning. And exactly as expected, Lin Zhirou followed him. Her eyes burned with the fury of someone who felt abandoned. She pinned him onto the bed without mercy, then punished him by biting into his shoulder. By the time she was done, the guy barely had an untouched spot left. Absolute Yandere boss mode activated. He wore an even more addicted smile than she did. Instead of running away, he accepted it. Their road toward marriage was far from smooth. But now he had a loving biological family behind him, a brother who supported him without conditions, an eldest sister who understood the meaning of respect, and a second sister who learned restraint. After everything, the separation, the misunderstandings, the obsession, and the reunion,